So when Jesus talks about birth pangs, I didn't just learn this from Mike Bickle. I have a 4-month old, so I just watched my spouse give birth, and I myself had a baby as well. And what I learned from my friend E.K. Cole, who I'm probably going to bring on here to talk about the similarities of the death life cycle that happen in birth. Because at the point where it's time for the baby to come, you feel like you're going to die. It is a void. It is an unknown. Physically watching someone go through contractions. First of all, my spouse is a G, no meds, and there were no IVs because of what happened in Asheville. So they had no fluids, no meds, just water and grit. Side note. But when you're coming close to birth, EK says, it feels like you're going to die. And as EK was helping me coach my spouse, they said, your job is to bring them through the portal. And that's what Jesus is doing in Matthew 24. He's helping us to see there will be a portal that feels like it's all going to go dark. And he talks about it. Let's jump back in. We're in verse 15. When you see the disgusting and destructive thing that Daniel talked about standing in the holy place, the reader should understand this. Then those in Judea must escape to the mountains, and those on the roof should not come down to grab things from their houses, and those in the fields shouldn't come back to grab their clothes. How terrible it will be at that time for women who are pregnant, and for women who are nursing their children. Pray it doesn't happen in winter or on the Sabbath day. Winter would be a terrible time to try to travel in the desert. And the Sabbath day, they take it seriously, which means you couldn't get a ride. Ain't nobody gonna pick you up, okay? There will be great suffering, such as the world has never before seen and will never see again. That's the good news. And if that time weren't shortened, nobody would be rescued. But for the sake of the ones whom God chose, the time will be cut short. Then, during that time, if somebody says to you, look, here's the Christ, or he's over there, don't believe it. False Christs and false prophets will appear, and they will offer great signs and wonders in order to deceive, if possible, even those who God has chosen. And that's key. If it was possible, these false prophets would choose you. They would seek to deceive you. And Jesus says, if possible, we have a choice to make about what we worship. So if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, don't go out. And if they told you, he's over there in these deep rooms inside this house, don't believe them. Don't believe it. Just as lightning flashes from the east to the west, so it will be with the coming of the human one. What Jesus is saying here is it's going to be obvious where I'm at. Anybody that's making you jump through a whole lot of hoops to find God and to be ready for the end times, Jesus is like, don't believe that trash. It will be so obvious to you where I'm at. And to reiterate that point, Jesus says, the vultures gather wherever the body is. You got to use your common sense. You got to use your intuition. Let's keep going. We're in verse 29. Now, immediately after the suffering of that time, the sun will become dark, and the moon won't give its light, and the stars fall from the sky, and the planets and other heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then the sign of the human one. Y'all, listen. The sun becoming dark and the moon not giving light and the stars falling from the sky is a commentary on space and time. Ask any astrophysicist, ask anybody doing quantum physics. This is a commentary on space and time. What Jesus is giving us is an indicator that when we get there, we won't even be oriented to space and time like we used to. Okay? Then the sign of the human one will appear in the sky. At that time, all the tribes of the earth will be full of sadness. They will see the human one, though, coming in the heavenly clouds with power and great splendor. He will send his angels with the sound of a trumpet, and they will gather his chosen ones from the four corners of the earth, from one end of the sky to the other. This is resurrection. The people of God are people who are oriented to life and resurrection. And the promise for us in this passage is by the time we get to that point, y'all won't even be oriented to space and time the same way. So all of this fear that people are giving you in this way of thinking about space and time, when you go back and look at Daniel and what Daniel says, it's why Jesus says, let the reader understand. Daniel says, actually, around that time, people will seek to change times and seasons. So we're trying to go back and redirect history. We're trying to change the name of stuff. We're trying to keep information from getting to people about history. We're trying to change embedded realities across the globe. Let the reader understand. And see my last video about what we think we should do with it.